And now, let's join ace broadcaster Mamode Akugha as he takes us inside the Niger Delta.
Hello out there and welcome to the program. It's Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region. I am Mamode Akugha. On this edition of the program, we're staying with the flooding situation in the Niger Delta, which has become a real big issue following its devastating effects on the region. Our first issue is an interview with Governor Seriake Dickson of Bayelsa State, who provides us an insight to the current situation of the flooding in Bayelsa State. Next on our lineup is our follow-up interview on the politics of revenue allocation, which Governor Dickson says has left his state and other Niger Delta states impoverished to an extent that they are unable to meet the needs of the ordinary people in the region. In the midst of the flood crisis, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo recently visited some affected states in the Niger Delta, one of which is Bayelsa State. We will, in the course of the program, bring you clips of that visit. And our last issue on the program borders on an allegation of threats to a young Niger Deltan from Patani local government area of Delta State, Mr. Desmond Depriye. He says he's now being threatened after speaking truth to power on this program. Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region will be back after this timeout.
Inside the Niger Delta.
Welcome back. It's Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region. Bayelsa State, the cradle of crude oil exploration in Nigeria, is till date endowed with vast deposits of hydrocarbons. The state is equally blessed with several tourist sites and arable land for agriculture. Talking about human resources, Bayelsa also boasts of citizens who are accomplished in their various pursuits and have what it takes to transform what the government and people fondly refer to as the glory of all lands. Well, with the advent of the flood that is currently ravaging the entire state, Governor Seriake Dickson says the people's collective experience right now is anything but glorious. Your Excellency, after 2012, probably 2018 is next in terms of the serious flooding situation we have had in the Niger Delta. Your state, Bayelsa State, is underwater, and I mean, I've been there, I've seen the impact, a lot of people displaced. What exactly is the situation with your people and your state in terms of flooding in Bayelsa State?
My sympathies once again go to all the people who are affected by this terrible, terrible flood disaster in my state. It's not just in Bayelsa. A number of other states are also affected. But as you know, Bayelsa is worst affected. And it's unfortunate that a number of people don't know the peculiarities of the Bayelsa environment. The entire state is below sea level. There's no other state in this country that shares that terrible burden of having a state where the entirety of the state is below sea level and therefore susceptible to perennial flooding. A number of people also do not know that geographically, all the major tributaries and rivers that, you know, empty onto the Atlantic Ocean, empty onto the ocean, pass through Bayelsa. When you get to, after Onitsha, before you get to Bayelsa, my local government, Sagbama local government, you have the bifurcation where the river Niger, the majestic Niger, you know, terminates and then becomes two rivers. One, the river Rt.Hon, passing through Yanagwa axis to the Atlantic Ocean. The second one, the Focados, passing along my village down to the Atlantic Ocean. So the whole water that collects from all these 6 countries, from Sierra Leone, Guinea, down to Cameroon, all the way to Nigeria, flows through Bayelsa. Bayelsa is the real delta of the Niger. That is the Niger Delta Basin, the whole of Bayelsa. And then some parts of the neighboring states. That's why in some of the neighboring states, you have these areas that are so-called upland areas and others that are referred to as riverine communities or areas. In the case of Bayelsa, the whole state is riverine. I mean, even in that sense. The whole state is littoral. There's no part of Bayelsa that's not connected by a river or by a rivulet or by a creek and so on and so forth. So that is the peculiarity of the Bayelsa environment. So we are always worse affected once you have a flooding situation that is above normal. Every year, from time immemorial, our people have always had this challenge of managing flooding year in, year out. And that affects our agriculture, because a number of the crops, a number of the things they plant, you have to evacuate them before the flood comes. Otherwise, you lose everything. But then this year, the flood is almost as bad as the one that we had year 2012. So about 60–70% of my community, of the communities in my state are now flooded, and people have been displaced. So in every local government area, you have IDP camps now in Bayelsa. Huge camps where we have had to move vulnerable, displaced people. My deputy and the emergency team we have in place have been doing a lot. The state government has tried as best we can, even in these very difficult economic periods, to try to get some relief. But how much relief materials can you get for this huge number?
How are you going to address the food problem in your state after the floods?
We are dealing with a situation that has a lot of dimensions built into one. There's a committee now that will go around our state. We have started, I've told them to identify most of the communities that are most susceptible, and then come up with a program by which we deal with some of it. We've started a number of shore protection projects, but these are highly, very, very expensive projects. It's not a sad story of physical displacement of people and having their buildings destroyed, which of course people have to now go and work hard to repair their homes, repaint their homes, repair and replace lost items, personal items. Those are minor things, terrible things. But then you also have a health dimension, because a number of these people with this flood now, we now have an increase in waterborne diseases and other things. There are some reported deaths. And in every IDP camp, that's why we have ensured in our state that we have standby medical teams dealing with the immediate issues. But then the medium and long-term issues are going to be issues of concern as well. And then you now have the food security issues. Because, you now have a situation where farmers have been displaced from their farms flooded, and farmers displaced.
You talked about the cost of trying to put some projects to, reduce flooding in your state. But the federal government of Nigeria, what kind of project, what kind of help have they rendered to you in this regard?
Other than receiving 300 or 400 bags of rice for thousands of displaced people, I can't point at any concrete help that the federal government has.
No cash support?
No. Not even in 2012. The state government never received any money from the federal government, even in 2012 flood. I know that we raised some money of our own, and some agencies and philanthropic individuals and companies came to our rescue. And I want to use this opportunity also to call for public-spirited individuals and organizations and partners and donor agencies to please come to the aid of the people of my state who are terribly displaced and living in very, very terrible conditions. How many IDP camps can we build? But we've tried, and trying our best to make them manage a very bad situation. So we've got two issues to deal with, apart from taking care and making sure that they manage their situation for as long as the flooding situation lasts. We also have the challenge of helping them to go back to their homes in order to be resettled, you know, to start their lives after the flood. So it's a very challenging thing. And just now, we're still in a recession. So the state government doesn't have funds for most of these. We've spent over $500 million now in the area of giving support to these IDPs and then constructing the various centers, providing relief materials, providing medical care, support to law enforcement agencies to assist in evacuation and maintenance of law and order in the IDP camps and so on and so forth. And all of them have been wonderful, but we need real help. We need real help. If there's one state out there that needs special attention and help, that state is Bayelsa.
What's your take on the fact that we are in a country that probably does not have any kind of policy for water management?
Recently, they introduced a bill purporting to take over control and management of waterways. But you don't have an answer to perennial flooding in my state that is displacing people on a yearly basis. So now the Federation, for example, should be thinking of building dams. Why should a country like Nigeria be at the mercy of neighboring countries? If their dams go wrong, then millions are displaced and are killed in Nigeria. That shouldn't be. So where is the policy, the water protection policy? Where is the environmental policy? Where is, because it's actually an issue of national security. I mean, if our safety and well-being and stability and security, at least in some parts of our country, where we have strategic investments, depends on whether a dam in a neighboring country is allowed to overflow or not. I mean, that tells you that you are not really in control of your affairs as you should be. So it's a shame that our country has allowed itself to be in this position. So you are right. There's no clear-cut policy about water management, about how we protect and manage flooding situations year in, year out. Yes, it's good to see, it's reassuring when these disasters occur and you see the president or the vice president flying around and making beautiful speeches of concern and you know, assurances and so on. It's very, it helps, it addresses the feelings and sentiments. But then we live to do that the next day, the next year, and the next year, you know. So I think that calls for a proper formulation of policies along those lines.
The plight of flood victims in the Niger Delta drew the attention of the federal government when recently Vice President Yemi Osinbajo visited the affected states to assess the extent of damage brought on by the floods. On Friday, the 19th of October 2018, the Vice President was at the internally displaced persons camp in Igbogene on the outskirts of Yenagoa, the state capital.
We want to be able to avoid in the future these kinds of disasters. As you know, this happened in 2012. A disaster of this sort of proportions happened in 2012 and is repeating itself now in 2018. But we must be able to prevent this from happening. And there are so many steps that need to be taken. First, we might need to dredge a lot of the water bodies around here. We might need to engage in dredging. Then we must also stop a situation where solid waste is dumped into estuaries, solid waste is dumped into water bodies. because that also affects the situation. So we must prevent that as well, to ensure that we don't block the drainages, we don't block the estuaries, and we don't block the waterways, so that there will be no flooding. I have seen here today so many of our brothers and sisters. In fact, I have seen 4 or 5 who have just given birth here in this camp. And I know that it requires a great deal of care. I mean, a lot of them will require a great deal of care, and a lot of the children here will require a great deal of care. We are committed to ensuring that they are perfectly and well cared for, and I'm speaking to the governor about what to do and the ways by which we can support them in whatever ways are possible. It is our duty, that is the duty of the government. It's the duty of the government to ensure that we take care of the people. It's not a favor that we do to the people. That is the duty of every government, to make sure that we take care of the people.
Sadly, however, the Vice President's visit was not accompanied by any material support to alleviate the sufferings of the people of Bayelsa State and its embattled government. In response to the flood situation in Bayelsa State, Professor Shibajo might have displayed his oratory skills, but as the African saying goes, when needs speak, words are simply nothing.
Inside the Niger Delta.
Recently, 3 oil-producing states in the Niger Delta, Rivers, Akwa Ibom, and Bayelsa, got a favorable landmark judgment from the Supreme Court of Nigeria that will boost their revenue from oil production. The 3 states had approached the nation's apex court for an interpretation of Section 16, subsection 1 of the Deep Offshore and Inland Basin Sharing Contract Act. In its decision, the court had granted the prayers of the plaintiffs and mandated the federal government to embark on an upward review of revenues accruing to it whenever the price of a barrel of crude oil rises above $20. Governor Dickson reacts to this development in the next interview. Your Excellency, the Supreme Court gave a landmark judgment recently that gives an impression that more monies will come to the federal government. How did you go about first taking this case to court? And for you, Your Excellency, what's the impact and what's the significance of this judgment?
I want to use this opportunity to appreciate the courage of the Supreme Court, and therefore of the judiciary in this country, for using the instrumentality of the laws of Nigeria to protect the long-suffering peoples of the Niger Delta and oil-producing people, and those who may have minerals tomorrow. You see, the rules and the laws are there, but our problem has been lack of courage and an absence of commitment to ensure the observance of these rules. Today, in a case initiated by 3 oil-producing states, Bayelsa, Rivers, Akwa Ibom, the Supreme Court entered a judgment by which the federal government has been directed forthwith to ensure that they calculate all shortfalls of payments from oil companies producing oil in this country, in our area, based on their production sharing contracts. Because, see, these things were entered on very liberal terms, favorable as always, not to the Federation, but to the other side. And now they said that in computing the share, the amount, to encourage them to invest, that they said that the production cost was pegged at $20. But they have been producing and selling, as you know, even before the first one was done under these production sharing contracts in Bayelsa by Nigeria Ajib Energy. It was $40-something, $28, and now you know that in this country we have sold crude for even over $120. Do you know that these companies are still calculating the returns to the Federation account at $20? That's what has been happening all these years, thereby shortchanging the federation, not just Bayelsa, Delta, or Rivers. While they are selling crude in the international market at 120 barrels and so on, they calculate what they remit to the federation account at $20 or less. All these years. And today, at our application, the Supreme Court agreed with our team and handed out a judgment. And so we are waiting for the federal government, made up of our teams and so on, and all interested parties to sit down and compute the shortfalls of all these payments under these production sharing contracts, where they have not been remitting the right amounts to the federation account. So this case is not just to the benefit of the 3 states, it is to the benefit of the entire federation. And all the federated states, all the states, all tiers of government, federal, state, and local government, and all states will benefit from this judgment.
How did it originate, the idea to go to court?
Well, these are all the issues that have been identified. It's just the first one. There are others already filed. We are raising the issue of subsidy payment, for example. If the Constitution says 13% of derivation to be paid to us, you pay everything that comes into it from the oil sales. You give our 13%, and then if you want, as your political policy, to give subsidy, you want to subsidize fraud by way of these fuel imports that we know that are fake, then you can use your federal share to do that. But what this country has been doing, and again we are going to ask for a fund, what this country has been doing is to inflate all this fake, and that's why you are creating emergency billionaires. Because it is our oil money they are spending. Money that we should use in building schools and roads and hospitals. Because it's not their money. They inflate these things, take it as expenditure. Subsidy will be deducted. They overinflate the production costs of oil in this country. Take all of it as a cost of production. Take subsidy and all of this. And then it is the balance that they share to us. So the states never get 13%. States in this country never get what they ought to receive as a result of this machinery of fraud. Machinery of fraud.
Moving on now, we bring you excerpts from an interview with Mr. Desmond Dipriye from Patani local government area of Delta State.
I want to specifically call Senator J.E. manager to take immediate effect to answer his people, or else 2019 election will surprise him, or our PVC will speak for him. We will work against him in the manner that he will, in fact, he will be very angry. This is your land, and we are the most populated in Delta South. So he should come back and answer his people. He should do immediate effect. 16 years in government is not a shite play.
Mr. Dipriye, National President of the Niger Delta Democratic Youth Alliance and one of our respondents in the first edition of our ongoing flood series in the Niger Delta, says he's now been threatened after calling on his political representative in the upper chamber of the National Assembly, Senator James Manager, to come to the rescue of his embattled community currently ravaged by flood.
Well, what I said about Senator J. Manager the previous time is giving me some little headache because of his voice and the likes of God bless Homoni, who is the board chairman at Ankoshi Delta State. And the man has been on my neck all this while. I don't even know what to do. I just pray that the appropriate authority should caution him because I have my right and freedom to speak at any given time. As Ijaw people, we love him. But loving him doesn't mean that he shouldn't do the right thing. I and my group as the National President NDDYA, which is Niger Delta Democratic Youth Alliance, I can vote for him with my people. But before then, he has to hear the cry of his people. He has been in government for a while, Why can't you vote for your people? Why can't you give your people what is needed? Why can't you offer the people what is needed? At least just little offer. The flood is there. These people have suffered. You can come to their aid. Give them half a bag of rice, and then go to their farm product, the farm that have been destroyed. You can walk down there yourself and see how to at least give them little thing to sustain them while they go for farm the next season. So I don't see anything that is wrong. I'm doing the right thing. And as a young man, I will always stand for the truth, because our people need the best. They are the one that can give you the ticket to go to any place, be it as a president, senate, rep member, house of assembly, or even the governor of a state. So therefore, I am saying that the people's voice must be heard.
That was indeed a series of allegations of an attempt to deny citizens their inalienable right to freedom of expression, as well as their constitutionally sanctioned duty to hold leaders accountable to the people. While we expect to get the other side of the story as soon as possible, the expectation is that perpetrators of all forms of harassment and intimidation targeted at Mr. Dipriye should desist forthwith, as he has committed no crime in expressing his candid opinion about the flood situation in the distraught Aven community of Delta State. Well, this is where we draw the curtain on our program for today. Inside the Niger Delta, we'll be back same time, same station next week. On behalf of the production crew, I am Mamode Akugha, thanking you for investing your time with us. Bye for now.